Another thing that I wanted to discuss with you is this sort of denial of Hamas's sexual violence.
Yeah.
Why? Like, why are
Yeah.
people doing that? Why is that a thing?
Yeah. It's it's horrific. I have covered a lot of really challenging topics, and I have never seen just such gross dismissal of really gruesome and well documented things. Um, Look, women in general in the international realm are often seen as unreliable narrators of their own experience. And Jews are often believed to have nefarious intentions. So this is a real intersectionality moment, right? You have anti Semitism and you have misogyny working against these survivors. And there's been a ton of well documented reporting and evidence collecting, and I've been very engaged with that. I work full time now for Jewish Women International, working on this in no small part. And there's there's a very sinister trope that Jews are just using this as an excuse to keep bombing Gaza, which I think is absurd. And I think on a more human level, the crimes, which I will not describe in detail, were so horrific that there really is, I think, for a lot of people, who would be monstrous enough to do that. Graham Wood, who is a journalist for The Atlantic, covered ISIS, and he wrote a piece soon after October 7th about how the things that he had seen documenting what happened on the kibbutzim on the border with Gaza were more horrific than he'd ever seen even ISIS do. And I think that it's important to think about how this happens in other conflicts. I had the opportunity to speak with members of Congress who work on this sort of violence globally, and I was joined by a member of the Afghani parliament, by a woman from Ukraine, by experts who work in conflict regions where this sort of violence happens all the time. And a big issue is just that people are not believed and people are reluctant to come forward because there's a lot of shame about this sort of violence happening to a person. And I think it's remarkable that we've had so far now 3 survivors of this violence come forward and share their story. And something that was really sad about one of the UN reports that documented this violence was that they weren't able to speak to survivors directly because of this media climate of disinformation around their experiences. So it's remarkable to me that anyone even came forward to share what happened to them, given that. And just watching the way that people rush to these responses to deny it, say it didn't happen, say it's just an excuse. It's really mind-boggling. Of course, I think that there's evidence that there's other bad actors that are trying to amplify anything that sows discord in the United States that are taking advantage of this. Um, but I think there's also just a really toxic climate in general online sometimes of misogyny. And when you throw that in with the climate of anti Semitism, it just has gotten out of control.